Welcome to this channel. This is the story of Samson and how it was betrayed by a woman called Delilah. Please remember to click on subscribe button and notification bell for more interesting story from our channel.
Samson is one of the most powerful characters in the Bible. He had super strength, defeated an entire army single-handedly, and even killed a lion with his bare hands. But sadly, he is also known for being weak when it comes to women. In today's episode, we are going to meet his weakness, Delilah. If you are new here, welcome, and without any further ado, let's get started. Now, the story of Samson goes way back. It was a time when the Israelites were under the oppression of the Philistines. Now, the Philistines, they hated the Israelites, and every chance they got, they would oppress them and make their lives miserable. So much so that sometimes they wouldn't even allow Israelites to worship God. They would stop them and say, hey, you can't worship your God. Now, this situation went on for quite some time. And during this time, God decided to raise a judge who will deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. That judge was none other than Samson, but unlike other judges of Israel, Samson wasn't a typical leader. You see, when God raised other judges like Othniel or Deborah, they were well-trained warriors with all the skills needed to lead an army. But Samson, he wasn't that kind of a person. When God raised him to be a judge, he was more of a Nazirite. Now, what was a Nazirite? Well, the Nazirites dedicated their lives to God by making a vow. In this vow, they promised to abstain from three things: wine, grapes, both the fruit, and the juice, cutting their hair, because hair back then was a symbol of strength. And finally, touching any dead body. See, back then people believed that if you touch a dead body, it will somehow make you unclean. So these Nazirites avoided that at all cost. Also, many times their heads were shaved as a symbol of their dedication. As we can see here, this Nazirite vow was a big part of Samson's life. And by dedicating himself to God through this vow, Samson received extraordinary powers. The Bible says that God bestowed him with the Spirit of the Lord and gave him superhuman powers. The Bible says, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and he became one of those who deliver Israel. Judges chapter 12, verse 11. With these powers, Samson went around delivering God's people from the hands of the Philistines. However, even though he had God's Spirit dwelling inside of him, somehow he didn't fully trust God. Instead, he was afraid of losing his powers and would do certain things to hide them. For example, once he encountered a lion, and instead of letting God help him and simply walking through the lioness den, he did something stupid. He actually killed the lion with his bare hands. Let me explain. The story goes like this. One day, as Samson was going along the vineyards of Lachish, a young lion met him and wanted to attack him. Now, normally, if it was any other person, the lion would have easily killed that person, and that would have been the end of that story. But since it was Samson, he wasn't going to let the lion win. So he did something crazy. He took the lion and beat it until it died. After killing the lion, Samson continued on his way. But later on, when he returned to that lion's den, he saw that its carcass was eaten. But what caught his attention was something else. You see, when Samson investigated further, he saw that there was honey dripping out of the carcass. He licked it and realized that it tasted sweet. So from that day onwards, whenever he felt hungry, he would go to that lion's den and eat its sweet honey. However, although Samson was strong and brave, he couldn't resist beautiful women. And one day he fell in love with a woman named Delilah. And no, this wasn't a love at first sight kind of thing. God actually tested Samson and sent him into temptation. The Bible says, and it came to pass afterward, he judges Israel, that Samson went and saw a woman in the valley. And he came and told his father and his mother, I have seen a woman in the valley. Go down, therefore, and ask her dowry, that I may take her to wife. His father and his mother said to him, "You are still in the days of your vows. Why do you want to be a fool?" Judges chapter 14 verses 1 and 2. See, at the time of this story, Samson had already made a vow to God to not cut his hair, to not drink alcohol, and to not touch dead bodies. But as God tested him, Samson forgot about his vow and asked his parents to find him a woman from the valley. So Samson's parents, they weren't happy about it, but eventually they agreed. And when they reached the woman's house, they found out that her name was Delilah. Now, as soon as Samson saw Delilah, he fell head over heels in love with her. And afterwards, he married her, but it wasn't just a simple marriage. Samson gave 3,000 pieces of silver and 3,000 garments as a wedding gift. And what's crazy is that he was only able to come up with such a huge amount because he killed 1,000 Philistines and took their stuff. But anyways, shortly after the wedding, Samson and Delilah moved in together. And this is where the real story begins. You see, the Philistine leaders, they were worried about Samson. They knew that if he wasn't stopped, he would eventually lead the Israelites to victory and end their oppression. So they wanted him dead, but they couldn't get close to him because they knew he had God's spirit dwelling inside of him. Therefore, they needed a plan, and a good one at that. So they went to Delilah and offered her 1,100 pieces of silver if she could trick Samson into telling her what his secret strength was. And to their surprise, she accepted the deal. So now Delilah, she was determined to find out Samson's secret. At first, she tried to convince him by saying, "My love, how does one hate you? How does one get rid of you? Tell me your strength, your power. Why am I so beautiful?" But no matter what she asked, Samson refused to tell her his secret. He was afraid that if the Philistines knew about it, they would take away his powers. And to be honest, he was right to be afraid because just a few verses later, Delilah went to Samson while he was asleep and cut off his 7 braids of hair. Then she woke him up and shouted, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." Immediately, Samson realized what had happened. He was scared and he tried to make a run for it. But as soon as the Philistines laid their hands on him, his strength left him and he became as weak as any ordinary person. And that's why the next thing you know, the Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and put him in prison. While Samson was in prison, the Israelites were attacked by other nations and they lost the battle. So basically, because of Delilah's betrayal, the Israelites lost their freedom. They were forced to live under the oppression of the Philistines. And as for Delilah, she went back to the Philistine leaders and said, "The Hebrews are gathered together. Come and take your lord Samson, and I will deliver them into your hand." Then Samson, being the strong man that he was before he lost his powers, he pushed the pillars holding up the temple and killed everyone in that arena. And no, it wasn't just the Philistines. It included Delilah as well. So that was the story of Samson and Delilah. A very sad story, if you ask me, because it shows us how pride and disobedience can ruin everything. Samson was a powerful judge who could have saved his people and led them to victory, but because of his pride, he kept secrets from God. He didn't fully trust God, and because of that, God took away his powers. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to be afraid. Even David was afraid when he fought Goliath, but David still trusted God, and that's why God helped him. So remember, brothers and sisters, no matter what, put your trust in God and always obey Him. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. If you liked it, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, please make sure to comment down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.